about 44 years ago. I think the project was started in 72. And most of the land surrounding this was a field. It actually was a larger property to begin with. Properties adjacent to it along Arrow Road to the east were subdivided and sold off by the society as part of the way I understand that they raised the money to build the building initially.
Thank you. Maybe I could look at council and just see if they have any questions of you. Councillor Hayes.
With the garbage area at the end of the roundabout,
Yes.
I understand that they're enclosed, Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
But when the garbage comes to pick up, can you give us a sense of frequency and the noise that those trucks are delivering, or do you have some other system?
I'm sorry our manager's not here. Perhaps if I could ask Mr. Cooper to comment on that. Is that all right?
We have the garbage is contracted. We have a contract because we're not covered by the municipality. So they come when we want them to come. Otherwise we can set the time, which is not during silent hours.
Very good. And do they have beeping noises when they back up, or have you gone to the sissing sound that new Vickers do?
I really couldn't tell you.
It'd be useful, because if the noise is interfering with the neighbours, that would be a possible solution.
Yeah, that's something I think we have to look at when we reorganise contracts.
I have one more question on parking. Some of the neighbours said that the parking lights are on and off. Is there some policy around that?
Security.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Very good. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Council, should we flip a coin to see who's going to come out first? Councillor German.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no question in this application that the value of seniors housing, and there doesn't seem to be any lack of support of seniors housing. I certainly appreciate the fact that senior housing has and is being provided, and also see the need for additional senior housing. And all I heard from people who spoke tonight is they agree. The issue in this case is whether this particular project and approach to providing seniors housing and the processes that have created it are appropriate and should go on to public hearing. There are a number of concerns that I have. In our official community plan, and these are quoted in the planning report, we have one section that says support institutional land uses that fit within the character of existing residential neighborhoods. We have a second one that says evaluate applications for multifamily developments on the basis of neighborhood context, site size, scale, density, visual and traffic pedestrian impact. We have a third one that says use the development permits to ensure that new multifamily developments respect the scale of adjacent uses and the environment and character of Gordon Head. In the planning report on page 91 of our document tonight, it says, however, even with the redevelopment of an existing site, consideration must be given to neighborhood concerns, and often those concerns can be addressed through good design. The key consideration with development proposals such as this is balancing the benefits provided to the broader community with the potential impacts on the existing neighborhood. And we have a long-standing policy at this council that we expect an applicant to consult with the neighborhood and consult in a meaningful manner that allows the neighborhood to have, at least in some way, some of its concerns addressed. That, to me, has not happened here. When I hear somebody say, yes, I met with the neighbors on many times, and then I ask the question, how has that shaped or changed your application? And the answer is, well, it hasn't. Apparently, in apparently in virtually no aspect, that is not consultation. That is not working with the neighborhood. And I find that unacceptable. It is certainly, social housing is seniors housing is an extremely important and pressing concern, and we need more of it. But if we put things in a manner that inflames neighborhoods, you do yourselves no good service. You are going to find increasing neighborhoods who are resentful and resistant. And that doesn't serve anybody well, especially those who, to their credit, will create more social housing. The second thing that concerns me is the fact that there is no intent to put a covenant or site-specific zone on this project guaranteeing that it will be used for social housing. And the reason is that that reduces the mortgage rates. I, as a councillor, cannot accept that. That puts the future risk on the neighborhood, on council, and the community at large. I have no doubt that the applicant is sincere, that they intend to build seniors housing on here. But things change. And on this council, as a community activist before that, I've seen these things change, where a property is rezoned and then it is sold. And we're being asked to put on an RA3 zone with no restrictions that would allow somebody to purchase this property and develop something entirely different there with entirely different impacts on the neighborhood. Now, I ask the question, do you seek grants or other funding or funding partners? And the answer was no. Why not? Because we don't. Well, if there is a concern with finances, we have a CRD Housing Trust Fund that looks to partner with various organizations that has done so to provide housing and to make it fit within the financial envelope. To leave the community and the council and the neighborhood hanging because it would cost, and you're not seeking other partners, is again, to me, absolutely unacceptable. You just, other councillors may differ. I need to have solid legal guarantees when I rezone something as to what will take place. I've seen many, many examples where one thing was promised and for whatever reason, and often with good intent, something different took place. That is not fair to the neighborhood or to council or to the community at large. And finally, a concern I have is the fact that there's only a commitment to built green silver. Built green silver is basically a building code as it exists today. That we at this council for some time have been asking that virtually all projects are built to the standard of built green gold. Even built green gold is going to very quickly be out of date because we are facing something called climate change. Yes, we are concerned about seniors, and I certainly am. But everybody in this room who is over 35, if not younger, has been living a lifestyle that has mortgaged future generations. Every one of them is going to live in a world that is far less desirable than that we have today, in all likelihood, unfortunately. And we need a commitment, at the very least, to build green gold, a solid commitment. Not an intent, again, but a solid commitment. And in fact, we're going to have to move very quickly to a higher standard than that. And there is an obligation on all of us, senior or not, to make that commitment so that those who come after us have some kind of a chance for some kind of life. And that's the situation we're in. For these reasons, I will not support this going to public hearing in its present form. I don't think it has followed a process of neighborhood consultation in a way that meaningfully allows it to address the neighborhood's concerns, and that's not appropriate. I don't think it provides the assurance legally and binding that council needs, and I don't think it meets the kind of building standard that we absolutely should be demanding for the sake of future generations at this time. And yes, it has one very great redeeming feature, and that is addressing seniors' housing, which is very, very important. But those other things, I think, should be incorporated into the project and not using seniors' housing as a reason for not doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe if you could keep your applause until we're finished and share it. I wonder if we could have a motion to go past 11 o'clock. Thank you. Call the question, sorry. All in favor? Carried. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Hayes.
Yes, I do. This is a very difficult situation to be in, where we want to certainly have more affordable housing for seniors of low income. And I do believe there's a moral imperative on us to do that. And I serve Saanich on the Regional Housing Trust Fund, and I am aware of some of the hardships that are out there and the heavy lifting that's involved. That said, Councillor Derman has mentioned that there are grants available through the Regional Housing Trust Fund, and that fund may significantly improve in the near future if they get the $30 million lift through the hospital and then an additional $30 million input from province, such that it's a funding agency, a capital funding agency that can help with these elements. I understand that the target was $300 a month rent, yet the figures show, sorry, I apologize, $500 a month rent, but the figures shown here were $600 to $750, yet with the 2.4 interest rate, they could lower their carrying cost to $560,000 a year, and there was a $100 drop on that. So I'm not quite sure where that puts the overall figure, but that is a little bit above what the chairman said is the target. And I passionately care for this project. I look at the design, and I just wonder, we do want green space, of course, but is there a way to lower some of the construction and keep a unit number? I didn't hear great concern. I heard greater concern about the height of the units, which is 3 and 4 story, than I heard about the numbers of the units themselves. Small units, typically 90% of them single people, about 240 people. But the impact on the neighbourhood was more around Arrow Road and the height of the units. So I just wonder, with the design opportunities that we have, that this could be lowered in some of its areas and address some of the concerns of the neighbourhood. Thank you.
Councillor Brace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Anglican Diocese for the work that they have done over many, many years in our community in supporting affordable housing. So that obviously has to be acknowledged. I also think that Saanich has to be acknowledged. Saanich has been a very inclusive community. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, because that happened a long time before I came to this council. It has many, many years of being very open to providing mixed housing, affordability for families, for seniors and so on. So I don't think we need to focus on whether or not we are an inclusive community, because we are, all of us here who are Saanich residents, and Saanich Council and many councils before have supported that. So I think those two things set aside, we need to look at this particular piece of property and this particular project. And is it a fit? The wonderfulness and the challenge of this property is the fact that it is totally surrounded. And I don't think I can recall a particular piece of property which has provided those same challenges. I think, obviously, when this particular part of the community was being designed, much like the area where I live, the decision was made to make little cul-de-sacs and little kind of twists and turns because that prevents the grid, and when you get a grid you get fast-moving traffic and so on. So the delightful part of how this whole part of the community was planned is part of it, is why everybody loves it so much. It is such a fabulous neighborhood. It has produced, though, this piece of property in the center that is bound on all sides. And so I do think there needs to be great care in adding to this community, adding to it in a way that is beneficial for people who will live there in the future, plus the surrounding neighborhood. I don't think it has been handled as sensitively as it could be. I think there surely must be ways through design to allow some development in this very unusual piece of property that can provide affordable housing and still be something that the immediate neighbors find attractive and in harmony. I mean, it's kind of the ultimate infill, really. And whenever we're doing infill, we're always very sensitive to the existing community. So I always look upon these committee of the wholes as sort of the dress rehearsal. Nothing is won by winning the committee of the whole. Ultimately, you have to get to the final event, which is a rezoning. And do I think that this project at this point would make it over that finish line? I don't. And so I can't see teasing along this proposal when there are some really quite glaring changes, I think, that need to be made so that ultimately it can receive strong support from the community, who will come out here and ask us to approve it because it will be an advantage to the neighborhood. And at this stage, I unfortunately don't see it meeting that goal.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did walk the neighborhood with the community, and this site is very interesting, as my colleague has just said, totally surrounded by single-family homes. And it has been a place for seniors to reside and be part of the community. Unfortunately, what I heard tonight made me very concerned in that wrote down comment. The comment was concern Mount Douglas I had concerns because the Mount Douglas representative said a few times that the concerned citizens are those living within the community of Mount Douglas, and didn't mention the greater community and respect and engagement of inclusion of the single-family residential all around it. That bothered me a lot. Infill housing, whether it's housing or densification like this, has to be sensitive to the neighborhood it's moving into. The building that's there now, I've been inside that building. I think it's, if it has 20, 30 years left in it, that'll be interesting. I'm not sure it'll be affordable by then for the operation based on energy and all sorts of things. But another thing that bothered me tonight was some of the comments the residents had made to the applicant's representative. They got no benefit from, but yet when we asked tonight I asked about the balconies facing the single-family homes, and the representative said, oh yeah, we could remove those. That was one of the things the residents asked for. And I guess the other one I had concerned about was, all of a sudden at the microphone, it seemed to be on the fly. Well, we'll put in 14 visitor parking, and then we heard that, well, where will you get them? Well, we'll take away 7 residential parking. Without any sort of basing any information on that. There is a need for seniors housing, no doubt about it. Unfortunately, I think that the public process that the applicant did was not in the fullness of what the neighborhood was looking for. And I think Councillor German asked what sort of, after having public process, what sort of amenities or whatever from the community did you put into the project? And he said, none. This is a really sensitive area. This isn't like a building happening on, as the residents have said, on our arterials or collectors. And this is an interesting site in that just the very corner of it will fit into the village of University Heights. And then you've got the whole idea of increasing density of seniors that could have walkers or scooters running down that Arrow Road, which and when I was on there, cars actually came up over that sidewalk. So is this where you want a lot of density of seniors, or this where you want modest density of seniors? So I think for me, and then there was something about the pathway expansion. The resident who said they have the easement and called, and the applicant didn't call back. So I think there's been a few things that haven't really happened. Good design can also be complementary. That's why I asked about stepping back. And then I think there really has to be some sort of transitional way of making this fit within the existing neighborhood. So I don't think that this is ready to move forward to public hearing. I think you'll have even a harder time at public hearing. I think this present proposal is too dense, too high, and the unknown for me is that the applicant won't commit anything in writing. That phase 2 really bothers me. I don't know what it's going to look like 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and neither does the neighborhood. So if we rezoned it to 3, then what we're going to see, what they might see in 20 years, might be something totally surprising. So without having some security for the community about ensuring it's affordable housing, ensuring it's for seniors, and somehow phase 2 has to be tied down for height, I can't support this application at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleagues have said a lot of what I would want to say about this application. I think we're going to have trouble finding a councillor who's going to move rejection of the application for seniors housing, but I'm quite keen on the idea of at least postponing further consideration until the applicant has met with the community to discuss considerable, if not substantial, revisions to the application. So I'll make that motion and speak to it if there's a second. In my view, the reason that I'm not keen to outright reject is I think that there's merit in the zone that they're seeking. I think that there's an opportunity to make revisions to the design of the building based on further and more substantial engagement with the neighbors. I think that something can be achieved here that would be a reasonable fit in this location. However, I don't think what we have before us this evening is it. So I want to thank the applicant for preparing the application, for attempting to fill the need, but it's obviously a considerable need for, or an undeniable need for affordable seniors housing, and I want to encourage that process to continue. I think what you're hearing from my colleagues this evening, and what you've heard from most of the speakers this evening, is that they support the creation of more affordable seniors housing. And so I encourage you to build on that opportunity to meet with them and have meaningful conversations about what kind of redevelopment of this site would work in order to achieve that. And I think you'll find a very willing partner with Saanich in order to make that happen. But based on the number of concerns I heard this evening, I would not be inclined to see this move forward to a public hearing, nor do I think it would have much hope of succeeding at a public hearing. Finally, I concur with the comments from previous councillors, in particular Councillor Dermott, who led off this conversation, that it's incredibly disappointing to hear that there were perhaps a number of community meetings that took place, or individual meetings with neighbors that took place, but no attempt was made to modify the design based on the discussions that took place. That's not something, no matter what type of land use we're talking about, what type of building would go here, that's not something that council, in my view, is going to entertain. You're a neighbor in this neighborhood just like everybody else, and creating good neighbors means having a meaningful conversation where there's a clear reflection of the dialogue that took place at that table. Not everybody's going to get their way, but certainly I think that there needs to be a meaningful reflection of the concerns that were raised and an attempt to try and mitigate the impacts. So I look forward to seeing something come forward hopefully sooner than later that's going to help to meet the what is an undeniable need for affordable seniors housing. But regrettably, I'm not going to be able to support this moving forward, and will be obviously supporting the motion to postpone.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too won't be supporting going forward this time, and it's a very difficult decision because we're having to look at the balancing benefits to the greater community, but then also, the existing neighborhoods, the potential impacts on them. And we just looked at the local area plan where it says that institutional use has to take into consideration care to the neighborhood and with the neighborhood context, the site size, scale, and density. And I feel, although there's been a lot of work done, I do believe, and it's already been said, that the communication wasn't there. I didn't feel an outright rejection from the neighborhood by any means, but really in a neighborhood that's not a new neighborhood, and there's people that have been there for 30 and 40 years. So it's very much their home, and I heard them wanting to cooperate and being supportive of affordable housing and seniors and that, but not wishing to agree on a zoning that would really have no guarantees, that would be totally open-ended, and not just for this part of the project, but down the road for the next part. So I certainly, as I say, won't be supportive of this, and I think in all my time I've been involved, I think this is the record for the number of letters. I think there's over 200 letters that we received. So this is a neighborhood with great passion that is concerned, and I do feel that they were positive and wanting to work together. So I'm looking for something coming back that really addresses the concerns that have been raised, still able to provide housing that's greatly needed, but also not leave it under more or less a threat to the neighborhood instead. And it also concerns me with the amenity, and I realize that I appreciate what the church has done and the work that they do, but an amenity of a sidewalk wouldn't be out of the line of having this being considered, particularly when the applicants said themselves that roadway is not safe for even somebody on a scooter. So acknowledging that the people that would live in the seniors' housing would be in jeopardy as well. So I would look for this to the applicant to work close at hand with the neighborhood to the existing project, and I do know 2 people that have lived in there, and it's a wonderful location, and I can see why the residents love to be there. But have a win-win for whatever comes forward next, which works for everybody, and they can remain good neighbors. So, thank you.
Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will support the motion to postpone, and I prefer that to the motion to reject. I'm hoping that, I expect, and I think the community does, to see additional senior housing on this property. That's needed, and that's absolutely supportable. but it has to be something that is a quid pro quo, that works with the neighborhood and allows them to be meaningfully consulted. So I hope the applicant will undertake to do that. I also think, at least for me, that we need to have some guarantees when we rezone that in fact what is proposed will in fact take place. And it needs to be legally binding, either covenant or it needs to be a specific site-specific zone that specifies that. Otherwise, with changing circumstances, as has been mentioned by other councillors, everybody could be surprised in a not very pleasant way, and that's a problem. And finally, I really hope when this comes back that we will see at least a commitment to built green gold. That's the future for other generations. And in the long run, that building to that standard will also mean lower life cycle costs for those who are operating it. The cost of energy, not right now, but in the near future, is likely to do nothing but go up. And the higher standard you build to, the better off the applicants themselves will be in terms of operating over time. I understand that the church and the organization who have done exceptionally good work don't have huge resources. But that's why I really encourage you to seek things like the Capital Regional District Housing Trust Fund, which was created exactly to support affordable housing.